Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Flames. Today, we are just going to be shooting the
Breeze.
conversation. Yeah, shooting the breeze here on Locked On Flames. Nick and I just want to have a nice, relaxing Friday episode where it's just gossip hour, and the NHL has fed us plenty of content here for you on Locked On Flames.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Flames. My name's Jess Belmosto, and today I am joined by Nick Zararis in our almost end of the year episode where we can just dunk on the NHL for doing NHL things. And if you like that, stick around, subscribe, leave a comment. It's my birthday. All I want is for you to leave a nice review. That's it. Take 30 seconds, not even. And I will appreciate that. But Nick, happy December 30th, end of the year. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very excited to start doing things again. This week between Christmas and New Year's is very weird. We're like, you're doing things, but you don't feel particularly productive. Everybody I know seems to have a cold, the flu, or COVID, so nobody can really get together or do anything. So, like, it's been a very weird week. I mean, I went to a bowl game in a baseball stadium yesterday. It's been a very weird couple days for most people. I'm very excited. You suggested this as an idea, and the way I wanted to start this conversation is very simple. I assume you are familiar with the NHL's marketing campaign from last year of no soap operas, just hockey, correct?
Yes.
Some group of marketing people sat down in a room and came up with that idea and said, the NHL is gonna love this. We think this campaign is gonna go really well. We want people to be invested in hockey. This is the messiest sport there is. I hate to be that guy and say they missed the boat entirely. Like, this is exactly how you market a sport to new people. It's messy and dramatic. This is how you get people who aren't sports fans invested in your sport. Is treating it like a reality show, treating it like a boy band. That is how you get people invested in this that wouldn't typically invested in hockey. So yes, there is nothing but soap operas in the NHL.
Yeah, I feel like it was immediately after that campaign, something with like Austin Matthews happened. And everyone was like, no soap operas, baby, just hockey. And I love messy situations. I love just like growing up, we're told like gossiping's bad. Like, good people don't gossip. No, everyone gossips. But the NHL gossip, I think, is like some of my favorite because it's so unhinged.
Yes.
And it feels like obviously like the minuscule stuff that doesn't like truly impact other people's lives. Like the Hockey Canada stuff, like that's not gossip. That is legit.
That's news.
Reporting. That's news. But like Connor McDavid being, filmed supposedly with this other girl that's not his long-term girlfriend. To me, that's gossip, and that is hysterical, and like I just love it. I love the discourse surrounding it.
Mess is very fun. This is something that Formula One leaned into. They told Netflix, make us popular in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
And Netflix has edited together a show that makes it seem like people who are teammates despise each other, and that the Drive to Survive is ridiculous because it's out of order. Like, they will just cut back and forth between things that happen like 5 months apart to try and weave together a narrative that didn't really happen, but they need to have these plot lines for people to cling on through, to follow throughout the show. That's what we're kind of doing with the NHL. The NHL, the fans do a better job of that than the league itself, I would say. The fans themselves are the ones who kind of foster along certain narratives and push certain agendas. Because hockey media is very consolidated. It's a very tight-knit group of have similar perspectives on things, so it's up to the fans to kind of fill in the where there's media is just bigger, like other sports have more people covering hockey. It's kind of a small network of journalists covering the sport. Yeah. And then the fans are left to their own devices to kind of color in and give it some color, to spice it up, to make it engaging.
Oh, yeah. And, like, I think that's what I really like about the hockey community is how just, again, unhinged we are and how we just lean into the drama and we lean into certain narratives, or we just tear it all apart and tear it down. I really appreciate the people out there that make it work. They do their thing and they make it work.
Oh, the fun part of the people who think of way outside the box and they draw lines and parallels between things that like a normal person wouldn't think to compare or to draw a comparison to, like the people who treat hockey players like people in a boy band where they're like making fan cams and stuff like that. Like that's a layer of engagement that is a layer of engagement that the NHL isn't tapped into. The NHL doesn't think of young people, especially young women, as their target audience and doesn't capitalize on an opportunity there. You can get people invested in anything if you appeal to them, and the NHL is very stubborn in who it chooses to market events to and who it chooses to platform and feature. I mean, there's a reason. It's frustrating when you consistently have really bad teams on national television, like the Blackhawks being on national television 12 times, because they're an original six team. I understand the appeal of the original six marketing. Mm-hmm. It's for the boomers. It's for the people who were still alive when there were only six teams in the NHL. Young people don't know, and young people don't particularly care about hockey that happened when there were only six teams in the league. That's one of the problems the NHL really has to find a way here is instead of like the token gestures towards young people, like they hired that one influencer to make TikToks, like as opposed to doing that, you got to find ways to make hockey more accessible. You need to make it cheaper. You need to find a way to get it in more places because it doesn't just have to be ice hockey. You can do roller hockey. You can do street hockey. There are so many other ways for hockey to just be more present in people's lives. I mean, hockey has lost ground in the last 10 years to soccer, which, you know, not even like MLS soccer, like British Premier League and Champions League soccer does better typically than the NHL does on American television. And maybe hockey only is just a niche sport because it's so heavily based in Canada and because because you can only play it in certain climates. It's very expensive. Not every high school is going to be able to offer it, which is another part of it, which makes the pipeline very difficult to get into. There are so many little things that contribute into the system of why hockey is the way it is now. And it really does leave a lot of it on the fans to kind of make their own enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, you talk about the accessibility, especially for tickets. Like I was looking at tickets for Bruins Leafs like Tuesday or Thursday night game. $200 for the last row in the building. Yeah. I didn't pay that much to sit in the last row of the building for playoff tickets. And 4 years ago now, almost back in 2019, but like it feels out of reach, I think, for so many people. And they have Trevor Zegras, right, who really likes that spotlight and that attention. Jack Hughes, not so much, I would say. I think that he's more, not that there's anything wrong with being camera shy, like I get it, like whatever. But the two of them together at the All-Star game, that was so fun.
Yeah.
Do more of that. And I know that there are people out there in the NHL that would absolutely participate in things like that. So do it.
It's very hard. I mean, this is one of the reasons it's hard to market this game is that there's not a lot of guys in the NHL who just like attention, to be honest with you. The culture of hockey is you're one guy on the team. No one's bigger than the team. Yeah. Don't bring any extra attention on yourself than anyone else. And then you've got this younger wave of guys who are like, you know, they've grown up on the internet where they see things and they're like, I want to try that. They see cool things and they say, I'm going to try and do that in a game. And now you have you have blowback to the blowback of what actually happened, where you have people complaining about the people complaining about the reaction to an event that happened, which just, it speaks to the craziness of how the internet works now, where if you don't have a take on every single thing that happens, you get lost in the shuffle of events and you're losing your voice, because to have a voice in today's day and age, you need to be giving a take about every single thing that happens.
Right. And that's a lot.
It is. It's very hard to be up to date on every single thing that goes on. I try very valiantly. I have a 3-screen setup in my room. I have an iPad I break out things on if I need to go to 4 screens. So yeah, there's a lot to try and keep up on. And even me, who's doing, 3 different podcasts, writing, all this stuff, even I can't be up on everything. So I don't even know what people expect from the average fan who only watches their favorite team.
Well, right. Like, I think a lot of people, like, don't, it's not that they don't care, but they're not terminally online like us. Where are they supposed to get the time and the energy to focus on this? If they're just throwing on hockey, like, I remember growing up and, it would be, okay, 7:05, it's time for, put on Nesson, time to watch the Bruins. The other thing with the NHL, I think that needs to happen is just getting new blood into the league. And I think we're going to see that with more, like, older people retiring and leaving, like, their front office positions, or like those marketing positions that think that soap operas are a great comparison to hockey, even though there's quite literally something every single day in the NHL. So I think that, hopefully over the next few years, we do see an increase in popularity. It will never, ever be like basketball or the NFL. But for me, again, we were talking about how, like, every player is just like one guy. I was talking about this the other day. We were comparing Patrice Bergeron and Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby is like one of those guys that just, like, nose to the grind, it doesn't say anything, will not, like, speak up, speak out, do any of that. He lies about having the mumps, for God's sakes, okay? Like, he's just there. And I think for, like, Patrice Bergeron, like, yeah, he does do captain things like donate money. But I don't know, maybe we just, I'm not saying go out there and be an activist, but, like, speak when, it's good. It's good to use your words.
It's complicated. It's one of those things, it's very complicated for some of these guys because they've never been empowered to speak up before, because they've always just been one guy on a team. Like, even when you're promoted captain, you want to keep your thoughts in the room. When you're the captain, it's about managing everybody that's in that locker room and trying to make what's going on around the team not really an issue. It's one of those things that as we get a more, I don't know what the word you want to use for it, conscientious, aware younger people, because typically speaking, younger people are going to be the most passionate and fiery about their beliefs. So if you get those people involved, then you could talk about it in that context of younger people being more engaged. And to your point about just getting younger in the game, that's something we saw really happen in the last couple of years in baseball, where teams just, once you turn 30, they kind of treat you radioactive, where you can get a 1 or 2 year deal to get back on a team, but you're not really going to get long-term deals. It's always going to be better to have the cheap young guy as opposed to the moderately expensive older guy. That's something that hasn't totally caught on yet in the NHL. There are still quite a few teams who are very happy to play guys who are older, who have experience, who are a little bit more expensive, because hockey and the Hockey Brain Trust values experience so much. At the same time, I think as we get a younger game, I think that has the opportunity to help. But again, it's a matter of the people in charge, the stakeholders, wanting to change things. I mean, that's the biggest reason hockey is where it is right now, is that it's the stakeholders don't want to change anything. They like the way things are right now. The 32 owners are very content with splitting the pie and trying to get a slightly bigger piece of that pie out of 32, as opposed to making the pie overall bigger, which is why you have silly things like the owners and players arguing over escrow, why you have a hard salary cap, why you don't have why you have restricted free agency, why you have all of these cost control measures. It's all for the smaller teams to not have to spend as much money to keep good players. That's all it is.
Yeah. And, you hit the nail on the head there. And coming up next, we are absolutely just going to keep going because we could do like a 3-part episode of all of the nonsense that has just trickled down to us talking heads this 12-month wonderful time of
soap
year.
Opera. Soap opera.
It's just a never-ending season. Like, it's just going to live on like General Hospital. But first, I do want to take a moment to talk about the National Highway and Traffic Safety Association. You're hanging with some friends and putting back a few drinks, and a few becomes too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you'll be fine. You live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's not a big deal. And what are the odds you get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, or you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are real, tragic, and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why the police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Locked On Flames. Whether this is your first episode or your 476th, I think we're on. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. I know Nick appreciates it. And Nick, thank you for joining me this year. This has been one heck of a year for the Flames and this podcast. So I appreciate being able to bounce ideas off of other people and not just myself.
Oh, it definitely helps as a creator to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, because sometimes you're working on a theory and you're like, does this sound totally insane? And you have no one else to bounce it off of, so you just kind of have to workshop it on your own, and then you float it out there. And you're not sure how actually grounded in reality that take is. It's one of the very difficult things about doing something by yourself.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of my favorite things is just to like scour Reddit and find other fans who are like, just, I don't want to say deranged, but like out there.
Engaged. They're engaged.
There we go. Engaged.
Because you got to remember, I forget what like the breakdown of it was, but like 90+% of the people who use Twitter only read things. They don't like things. They don't retweet things. They don't post themselves. People on Reddit, there's even more lurkers on Reddit than there are on Twitter. Yeah. So the people who are taking the time out of their day to post, to be active in online communities, those are the most passionate and most engaged of any type of anyone on the internet. The people who are taking time out of their day to be invested in online communities, those are the people who are going to be the most passionate, most engaged. And deranged is a bit strong of a word to use, but that type of fan where they're going to be working on theories that are a little bit more out there, that are going to spend the time for no reason other than trying to be right on the internet, doing hours of research just to post something on Reddit for a couple of upvotes. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and like I think back to like the VMA night, the night of the VMAs, and I was like, Nick, there's no reason Taylor would be there unless she was announcing something. And what happened? Like you just start connecting the dots and patterns, things like that. And hockey people love their routines.
They do.
If there's somewhere to look for patterns, it is absolutely hockey. And I think back to the Flames, not so much this year, but in prior seasons, just dump and chase. There was no strategy to their game. It was truly just the predictability of dump and chase.
It was simple and it worked. That's the biggest thing for any philosophy, any strategy, any kind of tactics you want to implement. If you can repeat it over and over again and with low risk, where all you got to do is get the puck in and go get it and you can start your cycle, it's very easy to repeat that over and over and over again, and you wear a team out, especially in a playoff series. That style is particularly effective, where you can be able to wear out the other team's defense from all those retrievals, them constantly having to go backwards, them constantly going to go back, take a hit just to play the puck. Over time, that wears away on players. It's really, it's an effective way to play, but the Flames have kind of gotten away from that now. They have a slightly different personnel that's not as well suited to play that style of hockey. But when you think about the teams that are consistently good for long periods of time, it's more about getting the most out of the players they have as opposed to the style or the system they're playing. Because for the most part, most teams in the NHL are running the same ideas and concept. There are a few outliers where there are certain teams that do things a little bit differently than everybody else, but for the most part, everybody's playing a similar style, both offensive, defense, and in the neutral zone. And it's a matter of having the players that are going to be able to get the most out of what you're asking them, as opposed to doing kind of what a lot of these teams that are in the middle of the pack are doing right now, where they're trying to shoehorn players into the way the coach wants to play, or the coach is shoehorning the roster together in a way that the GM has assembled it. It's very complicated and nuanced because hockey is so free-flowing and there's so little structure compared to some of the other sports, in a way that it's really hard to compare hockey in execution to everything. I mean, yeah, basketball has the same number of people and has similar flow and movements of rotations around the goal, of rotations around the basket, but the movement is so different. The things you need to do to set up a play are so different. It's really complicated, and it's why hockey is so really unpredictable for the most part. And it leans into that idea of, why is that so dramatic? Well, nobody really knows what's going to happen. That no matter what. And like, yes, there are people who are in the NHL who are decision makers, who are GMs, who are team presidents, whatever. They can't tell you what's going to happen. They assemble a roster based on what they think could happen.
Exactly. And I think about how when the Flames signed Kadri, I was like, oh, this is a Daryl Sutter dream right here. Yes. And it's taken him a little bit to get, acclimated. I don't think it's taken him as long as some of the other newbies, but he is doing a great job. And then I also think back to last year when Sutter really wanted to make Gaudreau a 200-foot player. And at 27, 28 years old, you kind of think okay, well, you can't teach old dog new tricks. Saying 27's old is disgusting, but it's fine. And he was able to get the most out of him. And I think there are certain coaches and that can do that, because it's also on the players to, number one, want to do that, and to also have the ability. It's not a video game where you can just press X to import superpower defensive forward Selke trophy winner, there's absolutely it's not a video game. And I think some people online just act and I get this because I'm I would move these lines, but it just doesn't work like that.
Hockey's a feel sport. It is really dependent on how you're feeling, how the players around you are feeling. I mean, we saw the Flames mired in a really bad shooting slump there for more than, I would say, almost 3 weeks, where no matter what, they were playing really well, but they just couldn't get the puck to go in the net. And the longer that goes on, the more stressed out you get, the more difficult it is to get out of that funk. When you're in a spiral, it's really hard to get out of it. Feel and emotion are parts of hockey, and they're very difficult to explain and to quantify, which is why you kind of would just rather have the most talent you possibly can and say, assuming the most talent you have, if you have a really talented team, you're going to be able to get better results. The better results you'll have, your team will be stronger emotionally, and they'll be able to withstand more difficult challenges. Whereas this year, the Flames have just been very up and down. They haven't been able to get into any kind of rhythm. They're just an okay average team right now.
And that's okay. There's 32 teams in the league, and it's not split into 16 really, really good teams and 16 horrific teams. There's that middle of the road. And like I said earlier this week, if you've listened, it's okay to be middle of the road. It's okay to just coast your way through a season. You don't have to go out there and be, I keep talking about the Bruins, but like the Bruins or the Devils who go on these ridiculous streaks, and it's okay. It is okay to just be average. You don't have to be anything more than that right now.
And I get it. I understand why some people are kind of frustrated, stressed out about this, because coming into the season, most people, me included, thought the Flames would be one of the better teams in the West, because the West looks very much like a mess. It still is very much a mess. Aside from Vegas, nobody has been particularly good for extended periods of time. Winnipeg has been okay. Other than that, I mean, Seattle's hanging around better than I thought they would.
Oh, 100%.
The Oilers are very unimpressive. They're very reliant on somebody who's never played this much goalie in their life before in Stuart Skinner. They're not particularly impressive. The Wild have been very clunky. Their goaltending is kind of a mess.
They're just like the Flames.
I understand why people kind of thought that this might be the year for the Flames to make that leap, get to a conference final, win a cup, especially a little bit of an older core. You've got a coach who's on the older side of things. So, like, a lot of people thought, like, this is kind of the window here. They're going to have a 1 or 2 year shot at this, and then they're going to have to reassess because Darryl probably won't stick around more than another 2 seasons after this. So it's complicated, and I understand being frustrated. But you also got to be realistic here. The expectations have kind of changed because the results haven't been there. You're not going to be a President's Trophy team this year. Your goal is to get into the playoffs, hope you get Markstrom on a hot streak once you get into the playoffs, and see what happens once you get there. You got to keep rattling them off, though. You got to be trying to win 2 out of every 3 as often as you can, especially against some of these bad teams, which we know the Flames are going to have opportunities against because they've got a pretty soft schedule the second half of the season going forward. They're going to have opportunities here, but when you're an average team, it's really difficult to play consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Flames fans know that. I think that they've lived it, and it's time to just go back to it after one fantastic year. But coming up next to wrap up the show, I figured we could do maybe some Canucks talk since they are coming to town and they have their own little drama going on, their own little soap opera with JT Miller. What is Vancouver? Are they a fever dream? Are they real?
The Canucks are what happens when you have to thinking about the organization. For quite a while now, they have managed every single off of it. They're just trying to keep their job for one more season, and that's why you have things like the ridiculous Tyler Myers contract. It's why you re-sign JT Miller. It's why you're not going to keep Bo Horvat. That roster has been assembled very haphazardly to get as much talent onto it as quickly as possible, without much regard for how expensive it is. That's how you end up with Ekman Larsson and Connor Garland. Not really worrying about the consequences of your actions, just trying to have enough talent on your roster to justify staying in your job for one more season. That's really how they've been managed for quite a while now. Yeah, they had the one really good run in the bubble where they got to the second round and Demko played really well. Other than that, the Canucks don't have much to show for it for the last 10 years. They had that one extended playoff run. They retired the Sedin twins numbers. They're going to make the Hall of Fame. Luongo got into the Hall of Fame. Yeah. They don't have much in terms of tangible results to show for it. And they have decent players on that team. Like, Demko was not good before he got hurt, but Demko has shown the ability to be good before. Quinn Hughes is a solid first-pair NHL defenseman, and Elias Pettersson is probably one of the 30 best players in the entire league. So you got your building blocks. You've got an elite first-line center, you've got a first-pair defenseman, and you've got a goalie you think can start 55 games a year at an above-average level. The problem is, they haven't really put a lot of effort into the personality management and the locker room, as you can tell, because the Rangers dumped JT Miller because they didn't like his attitude. The Lightning traded JT Miller because they didn't like his attitude. The Canucks said, "You're very good. We will suck up you being kind of unpleasant to be around because you're very good at hockey." That is not working, obviously. I know people saw the clip from the other night of him yelling at the goalie to leave the net so they could have the 6-on-5 at the end of the game trying to chase. They're a mess. There's no other way to describe it. A team with that much talent playing as poorly as they're playing speaks to locker room issues. It speaks to confidence issues. Mm-hmm. It speaks to all of the stuff that, you're supposed to worry about only if you're not performing. You can tolerate people being unpleasant to be around if the team is winning. You'll suck it up and deal with it. But when the team is mediocre or worse, you have guys who are outwardly being difficult to play with. That's a difficult situation for everybody involved.
Yeah, and you would think that someone, again, this is just armchair GMing here because I am not qualified, but you would think at some point they would say, we have to tear it down. And every time they're asked about a rebuild, they say no.
So they missed a golden opportunity. Last year, they could have gotten a first-round pick for JT Miller. They could have gotten a first-round pick for Bo Horvat. They can probably get a second and maybe like a fourth for Brock Besser. They're going to try and salary dump OEL. They might have to attach something with it to get rid of him, but he also has a no move where he can only be traded to, I think it's 10 teams, so he can kind of pick his landing spot, which is going to reduce what you can get in return for him. But you can get a decent start on your rebuild really quickly here. They missed a really good opportunity because the Islanders wanted a top six forward. They were ready to give the pick they gave the Canadians for Romanoff to the Canucks for JT Miller. The Canucks instead gave Miller that extension. Because they gave Miller that extension, they're not going to be able to afford to keep Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat is going to get them probably a first round pick and then either a prospect or a third, something like that at the deadline this year. He's having a career year. He's the captain of that team. You need somebody like that on your team, on a winning team. The Canucks are just kind of... That's what happens when you get people who are a little too caught up in just trying to stay on the job a little bit longer. I mean, you think about how long Jim Benning was there running that team and the decisions he made. And just like trading for Connor Garland and OEL just because they needed more defense. It's great that you went out and got guys, but Oliver Ekman-Larsson hasn't been good in quite a while. And Connor Garland is decent, but he's a little expensive. And when you're up against the cap, like the Canucks are, every little bit of salary cap space helps, and it's been a real issue for them over the years. Is they're always right up against the cap because they're constantly overpaying for things that aren't tangible. They're paying for previous experience as opposed to what somebody's going to do going forward.
That sounds familiar, but I still think the OEL trade is astonishing.
Yeah. Tyler Myers' contract is awful. Just so many short-sighted decisions just for the immediate moment as opposed to the long-term health of the team.
And that, my friends, is how you don't manage not just a hockey team, but your life. We're here to give you fantastic advice here on Locked On Flames. Think about the future, not just the now. Locked On Flames, everyone. But, what's your score prediction?
I think the Flames will win.
Yeah.
Score-wise, no idea. Because we've seen the Flames score a lot of goals. Okay, 4-2. I could see that. I think the Flames will win.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Vancouver stinks. But
they also just lost to Vancouver.
This is true. This is very true.
Don't go in and underestimate your opponent.
Correct.
Fight for your life like it's a Game 7.
In December, yeah.
Yeah. Do you really want to lose to Vancouver?
Yeah.
I'm going to shoot them into winning.
Yeah, you got to go into the new year on a high note. Come on.
Exactly. Please.
Yeah. Please.
You never end practice on a miss.
Yes, please. I beg.
All right. So, I think that does it. Okay. Thank you, Kat. Thank you everyone for tuning into Locked On Flames, especially this year. It's been a wild ride. I do have a Flames year in review going up tomorrow. I guess tonight at midnight. Oh, hello. Would you say hi? Okay, thank you. And I have a crossover with JD Hernandez from Locked On Ducks. Just another fun, relaxing episode coming up as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto and the pod at LO_FlamesPod. And Nick, plug away.
You can find me at Nick Zararis, Nick Zararis. I never log off. I never stop tweeting. You'll see me on the timeline, unfortunately.
Everywhere, every day. And that's why you're a host.
Correct.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Be safe.
Yeah, be safe this weekend, please, people.
Yeah. Like this PSA said, drive sober or get pulled over. Okay? Listen to them.
Yeah.